Hello and welcome to another tutorial video. This video will be an XNA game tutorial video. This will be the very first time I would have done one of these videos because literally just a couple hours before recording this video, I watched this really good video about making some XNA games and I actually managed to figure this code out for myself. So in this tutorial, just be learning about drawing a sprite on the screen and then moving it about using the arrow keys or WASD keys. I might do eventually I might do a full game series, like game development series, but for now I'm just doing separate tutorials. So let's get started. Already got Visual Studio open. You must have any version of Visual Studio, so that's Express. I've got Professional here, or Ultimate, whatever version you want. You have to have XNA Game Studio installed. I've got version 4 installed. I recommend you also get the latest one. So I'm going to create a new project. I'm going to go to other languages, which will be Visual C#, Game Studio 4, and then Windows Games 4. Of course, you can do an Xbox game or Windows games, up to you. But you can do in the Windows game as well, is you can actually program an Xbox controller in the Windows game. So for example, if you do have an Xbox controller, you can plug it, or a wired one, you can plug it into your computer, your Windows computer, and then you can use your game controller to control your game in Windows, even though it's still a Windows game. So I'm just going to call it Sprite Movement. Just push enter. It's just creating the project. Now whilst Visual Basic is doing that, I have got some resources which I already have, like the textures for the sprite. I'm just remaking a simple car on the screen and driving it about. These textures here, this one you don't actually need, but these ones here, I will put them up for download in the description. Simply click that and then you can download them in zip file and extract them. They're not big at all. As you can see, they're only 8 kilobits each, and they are 70 by 47, so they're not too big images. First thing we're going to want to do is import those images. So we're just going to create a new you notice here we have sprites movement with a little Windows flag next to it. This is actually all the game kind of like structure, I guess, if you call it the game project here. Then this with like what looks like a little window with like 2 balloons next to it, this is the actual content project. This is where you put all your content in here. So I'm going to go right click on that, go to add. I'm going to do a new folder just called vehicles. Now this is obviously if you were on a game and you had different sprites, you would put them in different folders like that just to group them easier. So call it vehicles and right click on that folder, go to add existing items. We're going to go over to where we saved those graphics. You can use your own graphics if you wanted to. That is not the right one. Of course, or you can just use these ones. So it's car down, car left, car right, car up. Just add those. It's just importing them. There we are. So now they are imported. We can go ahead and start coding. So you notice that a lot of these things are already done. Well, XNA gives us all the code to work with. You've got initialization. This is where everything is initialized. You load content. This is where you load all your graphics and all your content files. Unload content we don't actually need. So what we're going to do is we are going to delete this because we don't actually need it and no one actually uses it because XNA will do this for you anyway when exiting the game, so you don't actually need it. It's just for if you've got like external code or something, like an external references, for example. You get a load of content, which I've just been through that. Update, this is where pretty much all your game operations happen, and then your draw, this is where all the sprites get drawn with the graphics. So first thing we're going to want to define a few things. So you notice here we've got this graphics being defined as a graphics device manager and the sprite batch being defined as a sprite batch. What we're going to want to do is you just want to create a new line under this, and then we're going to want to create a few integers or numbers. So we're just going to type in int. Now this is going to be the height and width of the actual game itself, so we're just going to create one called width, and that is going to equal 800. You can have this equal whatever you want, and height, which is going to be 600 here. So this is basically just the screen resolution, which will be 800 by 600. This is the default XNA gives you anyway, but we're going to define it anyway in case we wanted to change it later. And it makes it useful as well. If you just define it up here, then you don't have to keep typing it out each time. You can just keep referring to those. We're going to want to create a float. This is going to be the speed in which the car moves, so I'm just going to call this speed. Well, I'm just going to call it s_car. S for speed, of course. Don't forget the little colon. Now we're going to want to create a texture 2D. Now what this texture 2D is if I can spell it right, I'm just going to call this t_car, T for texture, of course. So it's texture car and speed car. What this texture 2D it's basically just a 2D texture, which is what we got here, the car. All of this is a 2D texture. It's nothing fancy. All it literally is just a 2D texture. It's just a bitmap or a PNG, portable network graphic. So we've got a texture 2D defined, and one last thing we need to define is a vector2, which is basically a point. So if you're familiar with Visual Basic, that's just be the same as a point, really. This is going to be a position of the car on the screen, so I'm just going to call it p_car. Now again, you can just call these whatever you want. So I recommend do it, obviously stuff you'll be able to recognize it here. I've got S for speed, T for texture, and then the P for the position, and then here I've just got the sprite name I'm going to be using, which is car. So p_car, I mean, this is going to be equal to a new vector2, and then in the brackets we're going to want to define that vector2. So the location for now, we'll just do it as a 300.0f. Now that's f at the end is very important, because that f tells it is the f means a float, and as you can see here in vector2 we are required to use a float. So if we do not put that code, it will not work. It will just return out on error. So this is all the defining done. Again, this code I will put up available for download in the description, so don't worry about if you get it wrong in the end. You can just download that and see what you got wrong. Next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to scroll down to the main game1 public class here, which is right underneath here, where the graphics is being defined as a new graphics device manager. Underneath that, we are going to want to create a new line, and this is where we are going to define the height and the actual width of the game itself. We've defined the integers here, but we haven't actually used these integers anywhere. So we haven't told XNA to set the form size or the game size to what we've defined up here. So we're just gonna go to graphics dot preferred, oops, if I can spell it right, graphics dot preferred back buffer or width equals or width colon, and it's the same thing for the height. I'm not going to go too much into these because this isn't for the main tutorial, isn't about this. So height like that equals height. So as you can tell, this preferred back buffer width basically just means the width of the game is going to be equal to the width up here, and the height is going to be equal to the height we defined up here. I'm just going to save that. Now we're going to want to scroll down to load content, which is right here, and we're going to want to loading our textures we've got down here. You can just go ahead and delete this little comment there after do. We don't need that. So we've got the Sprite batch here. This is one line of code. All we need to do is the t_car, which is the texture 2D we created earlier, equals content dot load, and then in the little triangular brackets, or the more on the left hand side, I'm going to do a texture 2D. It's basically just defining what type of content is it. It's a 2D texture. And then in brackets is going to be the location of the actual texture, which is in the vehicles /car _ right. Now with this texture 2D, well, not just texture 2D, but any content you load, you do not need to put the file extension. That's the great thing about XNA. No file extensions, it just automatically does it, because you could have loads of different file extensions for that particular thing, and there's only certain file extensions that it can load, so that will just automatically find the right one for you. So that's the vehicle's car route which created here, which is just the normal sized car, as you can see there. So now we've defined, well, we've created our texture here, we've loaded it in to our sprites. We actually want to draw that sprite on the screen. So where you've got down to this draw method, which will be all the way at the bottom, you'll notice we've got this graphics device.clear and then color.cornflower.blue. This is basically just telling it what color you want the background of the game to be. I'm just going to change it to white for now, just to make it, I just like preferring it white for now. And then you don't have to change that, you can change it to any color you want. Now this to do here, again we can just delete that if you don't need that. Now what we want to do is, this is where we're going to tell it to draw the sprite on the screen. So what we're going to want is, we're just going to create a new line, and we're going to want to start the sprite batch. So sprite batch dot begin, and we're also going to add another one that ends it as well, sprite batch dot end. Now this is basically just starting and stopping the sprite batch. Whenever you want to draw something, you always have to start and stop it. Otherwise it's basically just saying to draw it, but you haven't started it. It's like a car. You can't drive it unless you started the engine. And then when you've obviously stopped driving it, you turn off the engine. This is exactly the same thing here. In order for us to draw the sprite, it actually has to be, sprite batch has to actually be turned on. So this is what this does. And then once we finish drawing it, we simply just turn it off again. You have to include this dot end, otherwise it will not build. It will just give you a build error. You have to obviously stop it, otherwise it will just be continually going on forever and ever and ever, and that is not what we want. So in between the sprite batch begin and end, we're just going to go, we're just going to define a few more integers. Now this, we're going to want to create a new int of car. Actually, let me just think for one moment. Actually, no, we don't actually need to define any integers. Sorry about that. That was just for something I did earlier. We don't need to actually worry about defining that. Because we defined, that was going to be how we define the center location of the car, but we've just defined the location up here, so we can just use that for now. So sprite batch dot begin. In between that, we're going to want to do sprite batch dot draw. This is obviously just drawing the sprite. Open bracket. Now notice here, texture 2D texture. This is the actual texture the sprite is going to have. So this is the T underscore car texture car. The comma. We're going to want the position of the actual sprite itself. That's going to be the P underscore car, the position we defined earlier, the vector to 2. And then we're going to want to define just the actual color. It's going to have the color to tint the sprite. You use color dot white for no tinting. So basically that's just how exactly it's going to be. If you do say color dot blue, it'll put like a blue tint over the texture. You know, you may want to do that. You might not. Like for example, you could have just say the outline of a particular sprite, and then you could color it different colors. Rather than having like all different images, you could just use the same image but tinted different colors, for example. That's one way you could do it. And then that's all we need to add into the actual sprite batch itself. So just one line of code which just draws it. This is the texture, position, and then the color, which is white for no tinting. One last thing is the update structure, or I guess you'd call it method, I guess. This is obviously where all the game operations happen, all the fun and games. So we're just going to delete this comment because we don't need that. Now, this is it. It's not where it doesn't get too complicated here, but this is basically we're going to tell it when we push the key on the keyboard, it's going to move. So we're going to want to define our keyboard first. So we're going to want to just up here at the start of it. I always like to keep my define things together, then all the code underneath. Keyboard state. So we're defining a keyboard state. we're just going to call it lowercase keyboard with capital S state, like that, to make sure there's no interference with this keyboard state over here, equals keyboard dot get state. This is basically just saying we've defined this keyboard state, and basically what this is going to do is just getting the state of the keyboard. In other words, it's just saying with this, use it, say, is there a button pressed? You know, what is the keyboard doing? This will just save us coding out a few lines of code each time, so we can just keep referring to this. Now what you want to do is underneath this gamepad, this is what I was saying about the controller, Xbox controller, use a gamepad instead of a keyboard. It's the same as a keyboard but with a gamepad. We're going to want to use a few if statements. So if keyboard state, that's the same one we defined earlier, so that's the lowercase keyboard with the capital S state, dot is key down, this is basically saying is a key particularly down, open bracket, keys, dot, and then whatever key you want to be the up button. In my case, I want it to be the W key. Close brackets, and then close bracket that again to finish off the if statement. Then we want a curly bracket to open up the actual if statement itself. So inside this if statement, we're basically just going to add, we're going to move the sprite by the speed scaled by the elapsed time of the game. Now that may sound a bit complicated, but what that's basically just saying is we want the car to move. We want the car to move at the speed we defined earlier. Times, actually we forgot with this float S car here, we actually forgot to put an equals and then our speed. I'm just going to do 200.0f. So this speed here, which is 200, we're going to be timed by how long the game's been running for. So what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to do P, which is our position of the sprite, P underscore car dot Y. This is going to be because we're moving up. Remember the Y axis is up and down, which is W, so we want to go up. We're going to minus equals it because in games the y-axis is going down, so obviously if we want to go up, we want to be heading the negative direction, which is going up. Minus equals s underscore car times, which is the little asterisk, we're going to want to float game time dot elapsed game time dot total seconds. So this is basically just getting when we push the W key, it's going to be moving, decreasing the Y value of the sprite by the speed times how long the game has been running in seconds. And then all you're going to want to do is we're going to want to change the texture, so when the car is going up, it actually looks like the car is actually driving up. So the car is turning, basically. The T underscore car, this is the texture we defined earlier, equals content dot load. This is the same thing we did in the content load. Texture to D. Then in brackets, you just want to do the vehicles slash car underscore up. So now that's basically what we've just done, is just told it to change the texture to that. So now what we can do is we can copy this whole if statement and we can paste it 3 more times. So 1, 2, 3. And then we can just change these keys. So we've got a W. I want the down key to be S, the left key to be A, and the right key to be D. I like to group the up and down keys together and then the left and right keys together. So all we need to do now is for the down section, because we copied and pasted it, all we need to do is we need to just change this where we've got the P underscore car dot Y minus equals and then the speed of the car. We can just want to change this minus here to a plus because we're heading the positive direction of the y-axis to obviously move the sprite down, and then we're just going to change this texture to car down. Now this is see where it's very useful just copy and pasting, you shouldn't have to recode it each time. Now left and right is the x-axis, so we actually just want to change these to the x-axis. Now going left, the way the x-axis is done in XNA is it does it going from left to right, just like normal. So the negative direction is actually fine for the left, we want to be going in negative direction. So we just want, all we need to do is change the texture to the car underscore left. And then afterwards you just want to change the right direction, which is going to be our D key. Change this minus to a plus, because heading in a positive direction on the x-axis will result in us going right. And once again, just change the texture to car underscore right. Now that should be everything, so we can go ahead and we can debug this game. You see build succeeded. As you can see, there's our car. If we push a W, AS and the D key, and you see the textures change and we're heading in the right direction. Now one problem is if we say go to the end of the screen, the car will simply just keep on going and going. We don't want it to do that. We want it to stop when it gets to the end of the screen. This is really simple. This is just one little line of code to add. So where we've got the if statement here about the keyboard state.isKeys down, for the up key, all we want to do is just add, I want it to say if the key is pressed down and the location is greater than 0, in other words greater than the left side of the screen, if the location of it is 0 of the y-axis, sorry, so if it's if the sprite you know, is the location is greater than the top of the screen, then it will move. So we can't just simply do an and, we have to do an and in C# and XNA. So just do and p underscore car dot y is greater than 0, then move it. With the down key, just do and p underscore car dot y is greater than the height. Actually, we can do this in the brackets, so we do 2 brackets. Within the brackets, we want to do height minus t underscore car dot height. Because if we just simply do height, then because what it is it's the top left corner pixel of the texture it will do this by. So what we actually want to do is the back of the car will then stop. We don't want that to happen, we want the front of the car. So this is just saying the height of the form of the game, which is what we defined earlier, minus the height of the car. In other words, this is going to be the same as the front of the car. The left key, we want to do and p underscore car dot x this time, because it's left and right, is greater than 0. Run that code. Now with the right key, this is p underscore car, so that's and p underscore car dot x is less than, in brackets, width, which is the width of the game defined earlier, minus t underscore car, the texture of the car, dot width. And once again, that's just defining the front of the car. So now, if we also debug this game, you can see here the car no longer goes off the screen. So no matter how much I push the down key, it won't go off the screen. We can do this for everything. You can see the car is stopping at the end of the screen, like that. And if you push 2 keys, you can do a diagonal movement. Once again, that will still, stay on the screen. So that's how, in XNA, you draw a sprite on the screen and then move it around the screen using the keyboard whilst obviously preventing it from going off screen. Now, if you wanted it to go off screen, then which for a particular play you wouldn't necessarily want that to do unless you was going to, say, a next level or something, if like moving off the screen a certain direction, then you would just remove this code. Or if you only wanted to go off the screen in a certain way, then you just say, if I wanted this car to go off, say, on the right side of the screen, I simply just remove this code here. I go to debug it again. So say if I wanted to go to the next level, which I had to move off the screen over here, I'll just let the car drive off there and it'll switch to the next level. So as you can see, that code is very easy to get around and modify. So thank you for watching this video, and hopefully I will be doing more XNA videos soon. So until the next video, geek out.